Let's now head straight to the heart of action, the capitals that are shaping this war. Joining me are WION's correspondents, Anas Malik from Kiev, Simon Marks with us from Washington, D.C., and Rosie Bichard from Brussels. Anas, let me come to you first. Tell us about the situation in Kiev right now. You have been speaking to the locals as well. What have they been telling you?
Well, Molly, this is more of a ghost town right now. Lesser people on the road, lesser cars on the road, 6 p.m. curfew, only supermarkets, that too selected supermarkets open, cafes closed, pubs closed, other shops have been closed. So that explains the situation here in Kiev right now. Now, just to give you an account, there have been shelling that has been heard in the distance, and just before I went for this live, literally just minutes before, the city administration, the Kiev city administration has confirmed that as a result of Russian shelling, just a while back, we earlier heard two big bangs or two big booms in the outskirts of the city. The city administration has confirmed that 13 people have lost their lives or gotten injured in Markhiv area, that is towards the western side of Kiev. It's in the outskirts, but in the western side of the city. That goes on to explain the situation currently that Kiev is going through or is bracing for. There are more and more military convoys on the road, more and more checkposts on the road, stringent checking that has been done, and you are being asked to carry all of your identification documents as well. The people here, they are angry at the international governments, at the international community. They are in support of their government, but at the same time, they are a bit skeptical with regards to this new rule or this unsaid law per se, which basically bars people from 18 to 60 to travel abroad. Molly?
Right, Anas, tell us about the Russian troop advancement towards Kiev and the military gains that Russia has made over the weekend.
Well, the Russian troops are literally around at the gates of Kiev. It won't be wrong to say they're just 27 kilometers from here in Irpin, where the war has been ongoing, where the fighting has been ongoing, and fighting has been at street-to-street level, quite literally. It's just 27 kilometers from Kiev. As I talk to you, we just heard another boom. It's again in the distance, so you don't know where this, what this boom was. But presumably this was one of those again from the shelling that is being done. Coming back to your answer to your question, so the Russian troops advancement have been done. We're seeing that Kyiv has been fortified by the military, by volunteers. As I said, it's more of a ghost town, and it gives that feel of that calm before the storm. Molly?
Anas, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for helping us better understand the ground situation in Kiev. Stay safe. Simon, if I can come to you now. Volodymyr Zelensky earlier dialed the American president. Tell us about the conversation that the two leaders had and what further assistance America is mulling at this point.
Well, this is a series of conversations that has been underway between President Zelensky and President Joe Biden. Also notable that President Zelensky held a video conference on Saturday with members of the United States Senate, and that seems to have been very significant in terms of resulting in members of Congress on Capitol Hill putting added pressure on President Biden to take more stringent actions towards Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. What the Ukrainian president has been calling for days now is the implementation of a no-fly zone. As we've already said on the programme, there is no prospect of that happening because the Biden administration believes that that would put America and NATO on the slippery slope to a direct conflict with Russia that President Vladimir Putin and his senior lieutenants have all indicated could go nuclear. So the ideas that are currently on the table are, first of all, this concept of encouraging Poland to provide fighter jets to Ukraine, not the pilots, just the jets, and then the United States would replace those planes, backfill, in other words, the jets that get sent to Ukraine to assist in Ukraine's air defences. The Russians have already indicated that they see that as tantamount to tantamount to creating, in essence, a declaration of war by the West on Russia. So it's going to be interesting to see how that advances. The other idea that is fervently on the table here now is banning Russian oil imports. And we've seen the White House move strenuously over the last few hours to prepare the American public for that eventuality and the inevitable increase in fuel prices at petrol pumps from coast to coast.
We earlier played out that pointed warning from Volodymyr Zelensky for NATO, saying that the alliance will be held responsible for Ukrainian casualties over its refusal to impose a no-fly zone. We have already established what the NATO's position is on this front. But any reaction from the White House, from the United States leadership when it comes to the appeals from Zelensky and the concern that has been raised by the Ukrainian leadership over the consequences that this decision could have?
Look, I think there's no question that President Zelensky's presentation on Saturday to members of the Senate had an impact, particularly, we are told, when he said to them, "I may never see you again. I may not be alive to have another conversation with you." And that apparently concentrated the minds of those senators who were on the call. But for the United States, at the end of the day, the line remains the one between NATO and Russia. They don't want to do anything that is going to see NATO directly in conflict with Russia, even if that is at the risk, ultimately, of losing Ukraine. And one of the difficulties that the Biden administration is facing is that these harrowing pictures, I mean, if you look today at the front of the New York Times, which I've got right here, you know, right above the fold, the New York Times with the picture taken by its own photographer yesterday in Irpin of those civilians who were killed by the Russians after the Russians failed to observe the ceasefire, to allow the creation of humanitarian corridors. News coverage like that is beginning to impact public opinion here, which is why we're seeing now a majority of Americans saying they would favour banning Russian oil imports, even though the price of petrol in some parts of the country is already hitting, for the modern era, record levels.
Right. Thanks very much, Simon, for those inputs and perspectives. Now, Rosie, coming to you, Volodymyr Zelensky wants the NATO to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Reports say NATO is not in favor of that decision. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, so far for NATO, a no-fly zone has been an absolute no-go. And the main reason for that is that NATO says having a no-fly zone or initiating a no-fly zone would mean shooting down Russian planes, and that would mean essentially going to war with Russia. And the NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says that would lead to an even bigger war and even greater human suffering. However, we do know that the United States is in discussions with Poland on a potential deal to transfer military aircraft into Ukraine for Ukrainian pilots to use. So NATO allies have been willing and remain willing to share weapons with Ukraine, including lethal weapons. But so far, that no-fly zone remains off the table. And the key reason there is that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. And that means it's not party to the alliance's collective defence pledge known as Article 5, whereby any NATO ally whose security is threatened can expect defensive support from the others.
Rosie Bishop getting us those inputs from Brussels. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.